Revealed. How one incredible housekeeper exposed a hidden truth that 20 doctors overlooked. Maria wiped the sweat from her brow as she finished tidying Mr. Thompson's living room, the scent of fresh-baked cookies hovering in the air. Every corner she polished in his cozy suburban home was a testament to her hard work, and every conversation shared over those steaming cups of coffee reminded her what she was fighting for. Deep down, she dreamed of a better life for her two young children, a life with opportunities beyond her own struggles. Did I ever tell you about the time I danced with a girl under the stars? Mr. Thompson's voice cracked through the last traces of morning light, drawing Maria's attention. As he shared tales from his youth, his eyes sparkled with joy. Those stories painted a world full of warmth, something she longed to give her children amidst the chaos of late shifts and bills piling up. Then, just as quickly as the warmth bloomed, a chill swept through their lives. Mr. Thompson fell ill, and despite Maria's desperate concerns, dismissive doctors brushed aside her pleas, claiming it was simply age. That reality crashed into her like a tidal wave. Here was a man who had once danced through life as challenges now laid low and unheard. Maria felt anger bubbling inside her, a familiar flame igniting her determination. She remembered her mother's wise words. Bravery is born from vulnerability. Maria steeled herself, reaching out to her neighbors, sharing Mr. Thompson's plight at the community center. Her heart raced as she delivered her speech, a tremor in her voice, but fire in her eyes. We cannot turn our backs. He deserves to be heard. Yet, her words were met with mocking whispers. Look at her, the housekeeper, someone scoffed. It stung, cutting deeper than she wanted to admit. But she refused to let doubt win. As she dug deeper, a world of corruption and negligence in the healthcare system unfolded before her. Each truth she uncovered felt like a rallying cry for all those overlooked. In the midst of her fight, a fearsome setback struck when she faced the local healthcare board, their indifference leaving her feeling alone and disheartened. You don't understand. Maria choked back tears, her words met with cold, uncaring glances. Days turned into a blur of hospital visits, and with each passing moment, strength waned and hope flickered. One late afternoon, clutching Mr. Thompson's medical records in a sterile waiting room, tears streamed down her face. Voices around her fellow patients, weary and worn, felt like a chorus of solidarity. In that moment, she recalled their faces, the stories of families fighting to be heard, just like hers. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Determination surged within her once again, her heart pounding with the weight of truth. Today will be different. Today, she would stand before those doctors not just for Mr. Thompson, but for every single person who had ever felt invisible. She stepped forward into the doctor's office, voice quaking but resolute. Will they finally see her? Will they finally listen? The air was thick with tension, and her spirit was ready to ignite change, leaving the reader yearning to discover her fate and the truths that lay ahead. With a deep breath, Maria pushed the door open, the sterile smell of antiseptic wrapping around her like a shroud. The waiting room felt claustrophobic, filled with sickly sweet scents and muffled conversations that echoed her fears. Her heart raced. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, emboldening her resolve. Mr. Thompson's life depended on this moment. She crossed into the inner office, where white coats swarmed like bees, buzzing with half-hearted conversations and indifference. It took only a second for them to notice her. Their curious gazes lingered for a moment, but quickly darted away, lost in their never-ending routines. "Excuse me," she started, her voice barely rising above a whisper. The room fell silent as a couple of heads turned toward her, eyebrows raised, skepticism etched on their faces. "I need to talk to you about Mr. Thompson." "Miss, I don't think you understand. We have patients to attend to," one doctor interrupted, his tone clipped and dismissive. She felt a surge of frustration. "No, you don't understand." Her voice grew louder, a defiant wave crashing against their barriers. "He has been misdiagnosed, and I can prove it. You can't just ignore a person's pain." Eyes shifted again, this time with more interest. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. The sight brought Maria momentarily back to the community center, the same scornful expressions taunting her. But this time, she had something more than just words. She clutched tightly to the manila folder of Mr. Thompson's medical records, her lifeline, and her armor. "Let's look at the facts," she pressed, flipping open the folder with a snap. "His symptoms don't match what you've been saying. How about my research?" She could hear her pulse pounding in her ears, drowning out the clinical chatter that filled the air. "Those tests, these results, they lead to an entirely different conclusion." Slowly, one of the doctors, a man with graying hair and an air of skepticism, stepped closer. "You think you can challenge years of training and expertise based on your observations?" He scrutinized her, sizing her up. "They teach us in the same medical schools that people should not be just a diagnosis. You can't ignore the human aspects." Her voice trembled, but there was a fire in her eyes that demanded attention. "He deserves care. He deserves to live longer than that." The doctor's expression softened infinitesimally, just a flicker, but Maria seized it. Encouraged, she laid out everything she had uncovered: data, medical jargon, and the cash-flushed undertones of hospital policies indifferent to individual suffering. She was not just representing Mr. Thompson anymore. She was a voice for everyone who had faced the system unprotected, their needs unnoticed. As she spoke, the tension in the room thickened like warm honey. A few nurses glanced at each other, clearly moved. Maria felt energy surging through her, and for the first time, hope crackled in the air. She stood taller, locking eyes with the gray-haired doctor. A moment passed, like threads of fate tangled, and then suddenly aligned. "Fine," he said finally, his voice a controlled calm. "Let's review the case properly." A wave of relief washed over her, hope igniting in her chest. But just as quickly, a voice broke through, a cold reminder that this was not yet a victory. "Wait!" A younger doctor rushed in, flustered, holding a chart. "You can't choose to review this over a housekeeper's opinion. There are protocols." Maria's heart sank, but she couldn't let doubt choke her efforts. "You might be following protocols, but the truth doesn't come from paper. It's in our lives." What came next would either topple her fragile resolve or bolster it beyond comprehension. Could one housekeeper truly challenge the unyielding nature of the healthcare system? As her chest tightened with uncertainty, she prepared herself for what was to come. Would they fight against her or rally behind her cause? The answer loomed, heavy and pregnant with possibility. A heavy silence fell over the room, the tension stretching like taut wire. In her chest, Maria felt her heart pounding, as if it were trying to break free. She couldn't let fear win now, not when Mr. Thompson's future hung in the balance. "I'm not just a housekeeper," she said, her voice steadier than before. "I know Mr. Thompson. I've seen his pain, his struggle. I'm here because someone has to be. Someone has to care." The younger doctor's face twisted in disbelief. "This isn't how things work. You can't just walk in here and dictate patient care based on your feelings." "Feelings?" Maria shot back. "These aren't just feelings. This is about a man's life. This is about justice, about doing what's right." The words poured out of her like water breaking through a dam, and she could see the stirrings of some emotions in the eyes of the nurses who had initially turned away. The gray-haired doctor held a hand up, a signal for silence. He looked at the younger doctor, who was frowning deeply, then back at Maria with a hint of contemplation. "All right, we'll review the case, but don't expect it to change anything." Maria swallowed hard. "Just give me a chance," she whispered, a desperate plea wrapped in hope. "I just need you to listen." As they stepped away from the larger group, She could see the glances exchanged amongst the other staff members. Whispers danced in the air, some weighing her words against the authority that surrounded them. Others noticed the embers of empathy flickering inside her, slowly warming the atmosphere. The gray-haired doctor opened the folder. His eyes skimmed the pages filled with Mr. Thompson's medical history, and Maria could almost hear his mind ticking away. If we're doing this, it has to be methodical. What exactly do you want us to focus on? Taking a deep breath, Maria leaned in closer, and her voice dropped low. The symptoms. The tests conducted, they weren't thorough enough. You missed critical indicators. He could be suffering from something entirely different, like she hesitated, searching for the right words, an autoimmune disorder. His test results are misleading. His brow furrowed. You're suggesting a new diagnosis based on what? Anecdotal evidence. I can show you the research, she replied, pulling out articles she had highlighted and dog-eared. The shift in his expression as they began to review more details told her that she was getting through. With each slide of the paper, hope began to build again. With every point she brought up, uncertainty weighed less heavily on her heart. The young doctor remained skeptical, arms crossed tightly across his chest, but Maria could see a wavering edge. She continued articulating her points, eyes blazing with a mix of passion and desperation. When they finally concluded the review, the gray-haired doctor sat back in his chair and removed his glasses. With a heavy sigh, he turned to Maria. You may have a point. I will have a specialist take a look at this, but I cannot promise we'll find anything. Maria's heart soared at this small victory. That's all I'm asking, for a chance for Mr. Thompson, for his voice to be heard. Just as she settled into this small glimmer of success, the young doctor interjected once more. This changes nothing in the grand scheme of how we operate. You will always be just a housekeeper. Your role is limited. Maria felt like she had been punched in the gut. In the face of their indifference, the air around her grew thick once again. Would it always be this way? How could she hope to change such an entrenched system? In that moment, as a mix of hope and despair flashed before her, she considered the countless others like Mr. Thompson who lacked a voice. As she held tight to the folder, she wondered what could come next if she pushed even harder. Would she gather allies among the staff willing to listen? What would it take to force real change in this vast, uncaring machine? With renewed determination, she vowed to find out. But who could she really trust? As the door swung open, the next step in her fight loomed large ahead. Maria stepped into the bustling corridor, her heart still racing from the meeting. The sterile scent of antiseptic clung to the air, mingling with the muted sounds of doctors and nurses drifting in and out of rooms. Each footfall seemed louder, echoing her resolve. She couldn't let one young doctor's harsh words deter her. She had stepped into this world for a reason, and she wouldn't turn back now. She paused when she caught sight of a nurse, Susan, pushing a cart filled with linens down the hall. Maria had seen Susan tending to patients with a gentle touch, her smile warming the room even in the midst of sadness. It was time to connect. Perhaps here lay a first ally in her mission to find justice for Mr. Thompson. "Hey, Susan," Maria called, jogging to catch up. The nurse turned, a curious look crossing her face. "Got a minute?" "Sure, what is up?" Susan replied, glancing around as they stepped to the side. Maria could feel the weight of her thoughts pressing against her chest. "I need to talk about Mr. Thompson." I think she hesitated, uncertain of how her words would be received. "I think his diagnosis might be wrong, and I got evidence." The nurse's brow creased in concern. "Maria, you're not a doctor. You know how this place works. They trust the tests, the studies." "I know, but what if they're missing something important?" "I show them my research. There are patterns, signs they ignored. What if we could help him?" Susan's gaze softened, disbelief giving way to intrigue. "I've seen Mr. Thompson," she said quietly. "He shouldn't be that sick at his age. You might be onto something." In that moment, they shared a look that spoke volumes. It was more than just hope. It was a flicker of shared humanity, a desire to do right by someone who had been overlooked. "But why do you care so much?" Susan pressed, leaning in as other staff walked past. "You're just a housekeeper. Maria's throat tightened at the words, yet she answered with intensity, because everyone deserves a voice. He is not just a patient number. He is a person with a life and a family. We can't let that be forgotten. A silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of Maria's plea. Finally, Susan nodded slowly. Okay, I'll help you. We can talk to the night shift nurses. They smell something off too. Maybe they'll be more open to listening. Gratitude surged within Maria, but it was mixed with trepidation. What if this didn't go as planned? Would they find support, or simply face more indifference? Thank you, Susan, Maria said, her voice steady, though her heart fluttered. We can make a change together. Feeling buoyed by their agreement, Maria walked toward the staff break room with a newfound energy. But in the back of her mind, doubts lingered. Could a small group of nurses really challenge the system? As she settled into a corner seat, surrounded by coffee-stained tables and the quiet chatter of colleagues, the gravity of the task ahead loomed large. The whispers of a tightly knotted system filled the room, enveloping her thoughts. Would they come together in unity to challenge it, or would she remain, as the young doctor mocked, just a housekeeper? She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the strength behind her purpose. A whisper drew her attention, and she quickly focused on two nurses in the corner, their heads bowed together as though conspiring. What they were discussing was unclear, but their fervent gestures sent a bolt of urgency through her veins. Were they talking about her? Were they discussing Mr. Thompson, or their lives behind scrubs? Maria leaned in closer, her heart racing as she captured fragments of their conversation. Could they be scared too, or perhaps ready to stand with her? The air thickened with possibility, and as one nurse glanced in her direction, Maria felt a mixture of fear and determination. She wasn't just fighting alone anymore. She was ready to rally her newfound allies. Would they join her in this battle for Mr. Thompson? Could they find the courage to push against the unyielding machinery of the hospital together? Maria's heart beat with anticipation as she prepared to find her voice among the whispers. Maria's pulse quickened as she weighed the options in her mind. She needed to seize the moment. She cleared her throat, ready to approach those two nurses. Before she even stood up, one of them, a tall blonde with a piercing gaze, looked directly at her. "Do you need something?" the nurse asked, her voice sharper than Maria had expected. It was like a spotlight had landed on her. The break room felt smaller, the chatter around them fading into the background. "Actually, yes," Maria said, summoning every ounce of confidence. She sensed the interest of the other nurses nearby. "I'm trying to get people to look into Mr. Thompson's case." The blonde nurse held up a hand. "Wait, you're the housekeeper who thinks she knows better than the doctors?" "Not better, just different," Maria replied, her voice steadying. "Everyone deserves a fair shot. Maybe the doctors missed something." The room shifted as one of the nurses, a petite brunette, leaned closer, her curiosity piqued. "What do you know about his condition?" Maria took a breath. "I spent hours doing research. I found patterns that suggest he is misdiagnosed. I think his symptoms link to a rare condition that wasn't considered during initial evaluations." The brunette exchanged a glance with the blonde, who weighed her options. "Look, I've seen things like this happen before," the blonde said with a mix of skepticism and intrigue. "But it's easy to dismiss things in a hospital setting. We're trained to trust the system. Sometimes the system fails," Maria countered, urgency fueling her voice. "If it were your family member, would you stay quiet?" That seemed to resonate. The brunette's expression softened. "You have a point." The blonde crossed her arms. "Before we dive in, what evidence do you have? It's not just about gut feelings, it's about data." Maria felt herself hesitate. She had ideas, but now that she was under scrutiny, doubt crept in. "I can gather the documents I use for my research. Charts, studies, anything that could help prove it." "All right," the blonde relented, "but we need to be cautious. The last thing we want is to tread lightly through muddy waters." "Agreed," the brunette chimed in. "But if you're right, that could change everything for Mr. Thompson." Excitement rushed through Maria. They were listening, and if they were willing to band together, perhaps she wouldn't just be a nameless housekeeper. She might actually be able to help the man, counting on her. Let us meet after our shifts, Maria proposed, a spark igniting within her. I can bring my research, and we can plan how to present it. The blonde nodded slowly. You might just have something here, but it'll take more than just us. We need to rally those who care. It won't be easy. Maria felt the weight of her words. This was it. This was her chance to change the narrative, not just for Mr. Thompson, but for others in similar situations too. As they agreed to meet later, her heart soared, but a deep pit settled in her stomach. What if they faced pushback? What if the doctors dismissed them again? Doubts threatened to overshadow her hope. The door swung open, and another nurse entered, her eyes scanning the room. Maria felt the urgency of their mission crystallizing. They needed to act swiftly. Time was running out for Mr. Thompson. Do you guys think? Maria started, but the brunette interrupted her. Let's not rush into this just yet. We need to strategize, find our allies, and prepare for potential fallout. While you do that, the blonde added, I'll talk to a couple of night shift nurses I know. If they sense something off with Mr. Thompson, they might be willing to join our cause. Yes, Maria exclaimed, her spirits lifting. Would they truly rally together? As they wrapped up their plan, Maria caught sight of a group of doctors just outside the break room, their laughter ringing clear. She could feel a world of difference between her and them. She wasn't just a housekeeper anymore. She was part of a movement. But would the doctors heed the voices of a few nurses and a housekeeper? Or would they fall silent, as they so often did? With the fire of determination in her gut, Maria understood fully. It was time to rise, to challenge the status quo, and find the strength in numbers. But what if they all risked everything, only to confront the harsh reality they feared the most? What if they discovered a truth that shook the very foundation of the hospital they worked for? Maria's mind raced as she prepared to leave the break room, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The nerves and excitement intertwined, creating a storm of emotions. Could they really do this? Time wasn't on their side, and every minute felt crucial for Mr. Thompson's future. She stepped out into the hospital corridor. The familiar antiseptic smell filled her nostrils. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, bringing her back to reality. She was just a housekeeper, not just a keeper of floors and tools, but someone driven to make a change. Her thoughts shifted to the research she had gathered, the medical journals and articles filled with case studies. She felt a fire within her. This wasn't just about figures on a page. It was about a life hanging in the balance. With each stride, she glanced around, noting the nurses and doctors hustling about. Some were deep in conversation, and others seemed lost in their own worlds. Maria's stomach tightened. What if the doctors looked down on her for attempting to speak up? She was but a small voice amid a cacophony of expertise. Yet she remembered the serious and vulnerable expression on Mr. Thompson's face when he first asked her for help. She couldn't shake that image. She wouldn't that after her shift, Maria returned home, her mind still swirling with questions and possibilities. She rifled through her notes, scattering them across her dining table. The kitchen clock ticked loudly, a reminder of how precious time was. What if she couldn't find the right evidence? What if her research wasn't enough? As she began to sort through her scattered thoughts, she stumbled upon a forgotten article buried beneath her notes. The title caught her eye, Misdiagnosed Symptoms, How Rare Conditions Are Often Overlooked. She quickly scanned it, her heartbeat accelerating. This was exactly the kind of information she needed. Drawing fresh hope, she began highlighting the most critical points, recalling how they aligned with Mr. Thompson's symptoms. Hours flew by, the world outside fading as she immersed herself in her research. Finally, satisfied with her findings, she compiled a small folder. With a deep breath, she thought about the meeting that awaited her tomorrow. The fear of failure loomed large, but so did the urgency to act. Morning arrived with a dark gray sky, threatening rain. The mood at the hospital felt somber, and Maria's heart sank, but she was determined to push through. She snuck a glance at the break room, where she had first approached the nurses. As she entered, she found a blonde nurse already there. "You're early," she remarked, her tone softening as she glanced at the folder Maria held tightly against her chest. "Ready to share your research?" Maria nodded, the weight of her hopes resting on this moment. The petite brunette joined them shortly after, her eyes shining with a mix of excitement and concern. "I spoke to a couple of night shift nurses, and they're interested in hearing what we have to say." "There's strength in numbers," the blonde said, her voice brimming with agreement. "Let us present our findings to Dr. Matthews. If anyone will listen, it's him," the brunette proposed, determination etching her features. A low hum of excitement filled the room. Maria felt reassured, but a flicker of doubt gnawed at her gut. What if Dr. Matthews dismissed them? What if the evidence they had gathered wasn't compelling enough to challenge the doctors? But they had to try. Time was slipping away from Mr. Thompson, and silence would lead to his demise. They took a moment to gather themselves, steeling their resolve. As they prepared to present their findings, the gravity of the moment pressed down on Maria. What if we're making a mistake?" She murmured half-heartedly. "Change is never easy. But if we don't take this chance, we might regret it forever," the blonde replied, her voice steadying their nerves. Maria swallowed hard, her heart racing at the threshold of truth. Could they really unearth the hidden realities of the hospital? As they moved toward Dr. Matthews' office, each step became heavier, their destinies curling around them like the storm clouds outside. Would the truth they faced together be strong enough? Because sometimes confronting the truth means risking everything, and what if they found themselves in a fight they weren't ready for? The corridor stretched before them like a tightrope, the air thick with unspoken fears. The moment Maria stepped toward Dr. Matthews' office, her heart fluttered like a trapped bird inside her chest. She exchanged nervous glances with the other nurses. No one spoke, but the shared anticipation crackled in the air like electricity. "Here we go," the brunette said softly, placing a hand on Maria's shoulder. Her touch provided a flicker of comfort, a reminder they were all in this together. Maria nodded, steeling herself. She could do this. From Mr. Thompson. For every person who felt powerless. Dr. Matthews' door loomed ahead. It felt both inviting and intimidating, but there was no turning back. The blonde raised her hand and knocked lightly, the sound echoing through the silence. There was a brief pause before the door creaked open. "Come in," Dr. Matthews called, his voice calm, yet authoritative. They stepped into the office. The air was hushed, a stark contrast to the chaos of the hospital outside. Dr. Matthews, sitting with a stack of papers, looked up with an expression that was both inquisitive and skeptical. "Ladies, what is on your mind?" he prompted, steepling his fingers, gathering her courage. Maria approached Dr. Matthews' desk, clutching the folder like a lifeline. "Dr. Matthews, we believe there might be something important regarding Mr. Thompson's case that has been overlooked." Her voice quivered but remained steady. He raised an eyebrow. Curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" The blonde took a breath and leaned forward. "We found evidence of overlooked symptoms that align with a rare condition. This article discusses how medical staff can sometimes miss these signs." Before the blonde could finish, Dr. Matthews held up a hand. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I have a team of specialists who have been working on this. They're the best in the field." Maria felt a wave of disappointment wash over her, but she pressed on, finding strength in the urgency of their mission. "But sir, if we don't explore every avenue, if we ignore our instincts, we could be letting him slip away. Mr. Thompson's life is at stake." Dr. Matthews sighed, surveying their determined faces. "All right," he said slowly, "let us see what you have." Maria's heart raced as she opened the folder, laying out the highlighted articles and case studies in front of him. Each page seemed to pulse with their hope, their struggle to fight against indifference. This condition, it can mimic symptoms of something else. But if we treat it as something at isn't, she trailed off, struggling to find the right words. "Every second counts," the brunette added. "We need to investigate. We have to do right by Mr. Thompson." Dr. Matthews studied them, measuring their sincerity against the clinical evidence laid out before him. After a tense silence, he finally sighed. "I will review this information carefully. I cannot promise anything, but I'll talk to my team. Relief washed over Maria, followed by an uprising of hope. Thank you, Dr. Matthews. As they turned to leave, a flash of uncertainty crossed the doctor's face. But I need you to understand, this is a long shot, he warned. The system is complex, and change doesn't come easily. You might face resistance from your colleagues. They exited his office, the weight of possibility lingering in the air. Maria felt the thrill of action coursing through her veins, but dread began to creep in as she thought about what lay ahead. What if they faced opposition from their own? Change is a battle, the blonde said, her voice suddenly softer. But what if Mr. Thompson's life depends on us? Maria nodded, her eyes wide with resolve. We won't back down. This is just the beginning. As they gathered their thoughts in the hallway, unexpected voices echoed behind them. I heard what you just did, and their nurse exclaimed, her eyes narrowing with skepticism. Are you ready for what's next? The tension coiled tighter as they turned to face the unexpected critics in the hallway. Would they stand together, or would fear splinter their fragile alliance right when it mattered most? Maria took a step back, instinctually shielding the folder against her chest. The nurse who had spoken wasn't alone. A small group of other staff members congregated around, their collective gaze weighing heavily on her and her friends. Uncertainty filled the air, mingling with the scent of antiseptic. Each face held a different shade of doubt. What is this about? One of them challenged, crossing her arms defiantly. You think you know better than the specialists? Maria's heartbeat quickened. The fear of confrontation lurked beneath her skin. It was one thing to challenge authority in the meeting room of a doctor. It was another to do so in front of her peers. We're just trying to help Mr. Thompson, the brunette interjected, stepping slightly closer to Maria, as if forming a protective barrier against the others. There are symptoms being missed. We have proof. Laughter rippled through the group. It was dismissive, and Maria felt the heat rise in her cheeks. Proof? Another nurse scoffed. Is this some kind of joke? You're risking everything over an article? The words cut deeper than Maria expected. It's not just an article, she managed to say, her voice trembling but firm. It's a chance to save a life. Don't you care about that? In the silence that followed, she could see the hesitation flicker in some of their eyes. They shared a bond, didn't they? Each of them had walked the same hallways, confronted the same heartbreaks. But that bond felt fragile now, like spun glass threatening to shatter under the slightest pressure. Look, Maria continued, if we don't advocate for Mr. Thompson, who will? We've got to stand together. A murmur would have traveled through the group, and she seized the moment. What if you were in his place? Wouldn't you want someone to fight for you? A silence fell over them as they absorbed her words, and for a brief moment, Maria felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could sway them. Finally, one of the nurses stepped forward. I remember Mr. Thompson. He has always been so cheerful despite everything. It doesn't seem fair? Yes, Maria replied, encouraged. And it doesn't hurt for us to investigate. We owe it to him to explore every possibility. What if Dr. Matthews blows us off? The original skeptic shot back, her arms still crossed defensively. He won't if we go in numbers. The brunette chimed in, her voice steadier now. If we truly believe this matters, we can make him see it too. A sigh echoed around them, and one by one, the doubt began to fade. Maria could feel the tide turning. All right, the skeptic finally relented, unfolding her arms. But we're doing this together. No one goes rogue. We can't afford to give the doctors any reason to doubt our credibility. Maria's heart swelled as she nodded vigorously. Together, she affirmed, the word resonating like a battle cry. As they moved to strategize their next steps, each nurse's resolve began to emerge. The whispers of doubt transformed into conversations of plans and ideas. They shared memories, perspectives, and fears, weaving a new bond. But as they huddled together, Maria felt a flicker of unease. They had united, but would it be enough? What if the opposition they faced was greater than they anticipated? Remember, she said, locking eyes with each of her colleagues, we're doing this for Mr. Thompson, but we're also doing this for everyone else out there who feels like they have no voice. This matters. As they made their way down the hall, ready to confront Dr. Matthews and the real challenge ahead, the weight of purpose fueled them. Yet, something in the pit of her stomach never let go of that initial dread. What if they discovered answers far darker than they ever imagined? Would they be prepared for that truth?